GMGM. My name's Josh Gordon. I'm your host. And today I'm joined by Matt, founder of Thesis, founder of TallyCash. Matt, it's good to have you on today. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me, Josh. Yeah, no, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's we've had this book for quite some time, and I'm happy to have you on. You know, we've working with you as from the unstoppable domains perspective, and I think you're just a really interesting builder in the space. And I've got an array of questions to talk through today. But before we dive into that, I'd like you to kind of start off with telling us who you are and
Sure.
how you got into crypto in the first place.
Yeah. So let's see. I'm an incurable startup founder. I like the pain of 0 to 1. And so I was a poor startup founder back in 2013. And I started working on this. I had this side project that it seemed like was going to make some money where I was actually buying and selling gift cards on the side. And, you know, I like to program things, but I don't really like to sell people things. So instead of continually like buying and selling these things to make money, I launched an app. Hey, put in your Starbucks card and we'll pay you. And so we'd pay like 60 cents on the dollar and then we'd resell them at 90 cents so you'd get a nice spread. Anyway, so this thing was doing quite well. And then PayPal deplatformed me. And I had no idea at the time because I was just like had a bunch of Starbucks cards and started like, you know, just trying to make some money. But I didn't realize that this was great finance, that this is a high fraud area. And so I actually got into crypto because I was deplatformed. And so I found Bitcoin as an alternative. So we launched, it was just me. I launched this thing and I flipped on Bitcoin. I said, you know, send me your gift card, I'll send you Bitcoin. And we did like $50,000 in volume in the first 2 days. So that kind of woke me up to dig into the rest. I'd always been about the sort of like the decentralization ethos, but started getting interested in sort of like more like libertarian economics and some of the other things that come with getting orange pilled. And you know, since then over the years, that turned into Fold, which is a rewards play focused right now on Bitcoin. But I just kept launching things. So when you say I'm the founder of Thesis, that's the studio, and that's behind Fold. Since then, we've launched Keep, Saddle, and now we're trying to grow Tally.
Yeah. I think that reminds me a little bit of the Vitalik origin story of, you know, founding Ethereum. You know, you're working in this Web 2 world, whether it's in gaming or finance, something happens and it triggers something for you to say, you know, this could be or should be different, and then you dive on in. Very cool. So can you tell us more about what is TallyCash? Because that's one of the projects under the Thesis umbrella. And sure. I also think it's interesting how in Web3 we see a lot of these companies, like almost a lot of people use labs like Thesis Labs or you know, something like that, and they're building a lot of projects under the umbrella, testing different ideas in Web3. So I'm curious to hear about what the wallet play is here for you.
Yeah, sure. Well, if you look at the stack in Ethereum today, across the space, but it's just really clean in Ethereum. You see that, like, okay, so, you know, hopefully the merge goes well in a few days. But we're moving to, you know, this new proof of stake mechanism where we're working on things like decentralizing our clients. We're trying to make sure that the stack is robust, and it needs to be robust ultimately because we need, like, you know, state level intervention. Like, eventually someone's going to do something, and maybe Tornado's already done it, but someone's going to do something where, you know, the G-men or a large corporation try to stop us. And we want to be resilient to that. And we don't talk a lot about that, I feel like, in Ethereum. Like, obviously with OFAC sanctions now, it's on people's mind, but that was always the Bitcoin direction. Let's be able to resist, like, nation-state level interference. So if you look at Ethereum, you know, a lot of people will say, oh, Hetzner, AWS, all of these things are running nodes, and it's a big problem. That's sort of true. It's a little bit more complicated than that, and I think that we're only seeing that improve as people start home staking. But the other issue is if you actually look at the wallets people use, everyone uses MetaMask. And so I first got interested in wallets. I mean, I've been looking at the problem since 2014, at least, where it's like, you know, no one had figured out a good, really good business model for it. You saw folks like Bread that eventually ended up selling, and a bunch of other folks, and they never really landed on how can we make this thing sustainable. But in August 2020, a couple of interesting things happened. So first, I was looking at MetaMask for like an integration for another project, and I noticed that they changed their license. and they changed it from this open source MIT license to something they called the business license, or something like that. They made up a name. It's a custom license. And so they moved from open source to source available. And for people who aren't really into this, oh, what's the difference? You can still see the source. Well, the difference is you can't fork MetaMask. If you fork MetaMask and you get over 10,000 users, you have to pay Consensus a licensing fee. So I said, okay. Not only is that against what I believe in,
just so I understand that, Matt, when you say if you fork it and you get over 10,000 users, is that like creating a white labeled like wallet?
Yeah. So let's say you forked MetaMask and you said, well, now I'm like the cat wallet, or or whatever. If you get a decent number of users, and the reason they did this, or at least the reason I think they did this, is Brave had forked MetaMask, and so now you'll notice Brave doesn't fork MetaMask anymore. They built a wallet from scratch. But they did this because they were worried that Brave would surpass MetaMask, and they wanted to make sure that there was money. But if you keep watching the project, then they turned on swaps. And swaps have been, in MetaMask, a runaway success. Hundreds of millions of dollars in fees have gone to Consensus, have gone to their shareholders. And so it's pretty big. So suddenly it's like, okay, I see what you guys are trying to protect. You finally cracked open revenue, which is cool. But then you're talking about, the fact that we've even said the word revenue, that's kind of strange. We're not talking about this thing, these fees going to users, going to a DAO, going to public goods. We're just talking about, a fairly large corporation that is making a lot of money off of MetaMask. So that's when I first got the spark. And I remember when everyone else was sort of like working on, they were watching the election, like on election night in November, and I was actually just like drawing pictures of dogs and kind of coming up with like what does the foil to MetaMask look like? How can we do something that's completely community owned and operated, fair launched, and really all the cash, any cash that it generates, how can it go back to the community? So that's what led to Tally Ho.
Gotcha. No, makes sense, and very interesting to hear like MetaMask. I feel like I haven't actually heard any criticism of MetaMask. Being in
we
Web3.
all love it. We all love it because it was your first Web3 wallet, and honestly, the fox is cute, and it follows your mouse. And so, I think a lot of people are like, "Oh, this is kludgy, it's slow." They have lots of complaints, but we all have kind of a warm, fuzzy feeling around their brand. But when you replace the word MetaMask with Consensus, people start to narrow their eyes. And then when you talk about Consensus investors, like, "Oh, JP Morgan or MasterCard," I think that's when people start to things start to click a little bit.
Yeah. So can we dive deeper into, why is it important to be a community owned and operated wallet?
Of course.
Because it sounds like that is like the central theme of this differentiator. The features maybe are similar, but it's the back end that's different, right?
Yeah. So the core to me, and I think the big difference, the thing that when I moved from the Bitcoin community to the Ethereum community, the thing that started winning me over, is this techno optimism. The idea that we can make the world better, not just keep it from falling totally apart, which is the Bitcoin stance, but also improve it. It's really charming, and it's nice to be optimistic, and it's nice to try to build something better. And so when I look at a project that's succeeding wildly around this idea of Web3, I think most of us would say, well, it's probably not the same people in Web2 who should be making money, right? So when I see why is the power structure the same if this is a new paradigm? And the answer is, well, if the power structure is the same, it's not. It is not a new paradigm. It's not a new thing. It's an old thing that's taking advantage of the new narratives. And so the reason I think community ownership is important is why would I ever want to invest my time in something that I don't own? This gets a little out there, but I think right now we're all sort of experiencing this distrust in institutions, and we all feel like we're getting scammed in a million little ways every day, and so it's well, if you're going to invest your time and energy in a project, you should get ownership in it, and if you're going to invest time and energy, you should also see that it's not going to be taken away from you, right? I think of Web 2, all of us who got really excited about the Twitter API, built all these cool apps only to have API access taken away because it hurt Twitter's business. The same thing can happen with MetaMask. It can happen with any of these other sort of like centrally held projects. So anyway, that's my thing. And I think the other part as a product person is it's such a great growth tactic. Like people want to cheerlead the things that are theirs, you know? And I think the awful version of that is like shilling your bags, right? But the exciting version of that is like, yeah, I love this bakery down the street. And in fact, I made an investment in it and I'm going to tell you about it. That's advocacy.
Yeah. You know, I think I hear everything you're saying about community ownership, and there's one part of me that thinks, you know, when you introduce that element to it, there might be a lot of responsibilities or actions that not everyone's willing to take on, you know, to make that successful. And that's a little bit of maybe the push and pull of the community ownership, but there's got to be some people who, you know, want to carry on those responsibilities, right? It can't just be everyone saying, you know, here's my money, I want to be an owner passively. But
I want to own without doing any work. Yeah. And I mean, everyone wants to, right? Like, most of us, if we buy something on the stock market, we're not most people aren't going to show up for the vote. We're definitely not expected to put work in. So I think it's incumbent on us as like the creators of this project to find a way to break through that bystander effect. Part of it is you want to find a way to be the best to people who are actively engaged, not people who are like speculating or fooling around. But then the other part, there's a flip side, which is like, you know, just because you are a member of a DAO doesn't actually mean you're qualified. So you run into this a lot. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen like Twitch plays Pokemon.
No.
If you have a whole bunch of people trying to make a decision around one thing, they don't necessarily, if they all get equal weight, they don't necessarily make like for a good outcome, right? So, if we had an entire DAO and they were voting on what version of the UI, the wallet that looked best, I think that would be a failure. I don't think it would go very far. It would be like a fun thing on Reddit for a little while. But what you really want is, can you set up this relationship where you do give people responsibilities, you do play with representative democracy, you set up councils, and you actually structure something that can lead to a good outcome that can compete with like a big tech product like MetaMask, like it is today at least, but can also give the upside to the people who are putting in the effort.
Makes sense. And I want to dive into more like the community aspect to it. But since you started talking about some of the infrastructure you're putting into place to make this centralized product work, can we maybe step back a little bit? I might have jumped ahead when talking about the community side. Like, what is a wallet today, and what will it become? I want to really show that like as is to the to be state that you're really thinking through right now.
So what a wallet will be one day, and what a wallet is today. So like, I think if you put on a tech hat, you're like, oh, a wallet's not a wallet at all. A wallet is public and private key pair. You think that it represents a person, but it might not. It represents, there's some authorization around it, like here's some things that maybe that you own or that you're allowed to move, be it NFTs, tokens, or, just your ability to sign a message saying, this came from me. So like in some ways, a wallet is like an incredibly simple thing, but that hasn't existed before. Like no one knows how to talk about it, but it's actually quite a bit simpler than the idea of a wallet in your pocket. And on the other hand, let's go past a signer. Okay, it's a thing that's on my phone, it's on my desktop, maybe it's on an iPad, I don't know. It's probably going to be in my games soon. We're all working on solving that one. It holds all of these like, equivalents to like, here's a passport or various credentials. It may or may not hold my money. And so, I think the idea of a wallet and using the word wallet is still helpful today. But it's pretty misleading because it can do quite a bit more than that. I think the best paradigm for folks who are trying to think of where this can all go is just to think about identity. This is a way that you are representing yourself. You can think of it as like if you had a username across the web and across your whole life, and you could switch usernames or switch user profiles. I think that's a pretty strong way to think of it, and everything else is just a detail.
Yeah, the identity component's definitely interesting to bring up here because I think that's where Unstoppable and Tally really are trying to work together, right?
Exactly.
Which we'll dive into that in a little bit. But no, I appreciate that explanation. I think there was, I don't remember exactly. There's a too long story to share right now, but it was around if you take away the name that you used for something and think about it maybe a little bit more higher level, like what could it be? Like if you don't call a wedding and you call it like a day you want
Right.
to be with friends, like what is it? And so
Yep.
instead of like calling something a wallet and get away from that word and we think about what we're using it for, I think you start really thinking through some cool concepts of where you can take that. So let's dive into that a little bit more. Like with how do you see these permissionless community-owned tools changing how we're going to use the internet? And I'm kind of using permissionless community-owned tool here instead of wallet.
Instead of wallet, sure. I mean, for one, the way that we like log in to services is awful. It doesn't make any sense, right? And so that's where I start seeing, signing in with various like name handles and using signatures to do authorization. There's this whole honeypot that every Web2 company is running, where they have your password somewhere, and it's like this was a mistake, just from a pure engineering and security perspective, but also from it's also a failure of imagination, right? That you think that I'm going to have an experience with you, and I say log in, and then I'm engaged with you, and I'm your human until I hit log out. Like that's not accurate. What I'm doing instead is I'm bouncing over 300 tabs and all of these different applications and through mobile, different platforms. And for each one, I do want to represent myself as a different person, and if I'm driving Uber over here and I'm buying an NFT over there, like I should decide how I'm represented. And that doesn't fit with the logon system that we've used. So I think that's one that the whole space knows that we need to like take out. But then I also see why do I have an access card to this office that I'm in right now? Why am I carrying around keys? Why am I carrying around a passport? And the naive solution to all this stuff is pretty dumb. Oh yeah, just like stick it all on your MetaMask. Like, no, that's not really what you want to do. But getting to the point where we can actually like reason about all that stuff and suddenly have like a mashup of applications is pretty powerful.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the values of Tally Cash and kind of how I feel like that's important to talk through because it really guides the product you're building. So I'll share the three from listed on your site, and it's access for everyone, radical transparency, and full community ownership. And I was thinking about how, and we were talking about this just before the recording, how there's this, at least with NFT domains, there's a big clash between like ENS and Unstoppable, and I think actually at Unstoppable we want everyone to win, and I think that there's a lot of different solutions to this problem. And so when I read through this, I was originally thinking, all right, this reads to me like it's most radical decentralization over everything, but I think that actually you might have a little bit of a different take here because we access and how you think through even ownership. There's a lot of different things at play. So can you talk through those values and
of course,
and maybe how those can even guide some of the partnership with Unstoppable?
Yeah, of course. So access for everyone is probably one of the most interesting because that means like the most hardcore, privacy tech on this side and censorship resistance tech on one side. But it also means like I need to be able to spend my local currency with like a fairly low level, fairly low reading level. I need to be able to spend that to get the things that I need. That's what access means. Access means across like different ableness. It means across, geographic boundaries. So yeah, it does kind of conflict because to get people, they're not going to overnight suddenly, all of my assets are digital and they're all on chain. And like, that's not even a responsible thing that we recommend people to do yet. Right. So I think access for everyone is probably my favorite from a product perspective because it's like you have to meet the user where they are, not where you like think they should be. And you definitely can't lecture them on where they should be. You want to meet them where they are. So for me, a big one was, in the past, for example, I as a technologist, I'm going to be like, Polygon, I don't know. I don't like their solution as much as, these new roll-ups. Maybe I should wait. But then if you look at users, the users are on Polygon because it solved the problem that they had. And you're not like better than those people because you had some, high ivory tower opinion of it or whatever. So one of the things that we've done is actually we embraced Polygon while we've been building out Optimism and Arbitrum support because like a unique set of users that I haven't found elsewhere in the space. Similarly, with UNS, there's all sorts of arguments about ENS and UNS, and I learned that there's RNS the other day, and I think one of the things that I've learned in this space is to be a pluralist. If users care about something, I care about something. Okay, yeah, occasionally I might say, guys, maybe don't go all in on Luna. But, ultimately I want to go where users are.
I love that comment about going where users are, because in crypto, there's like these values, and I love that you're listing the values, right? And thinking about them and how they impact the product. And then there's also thinking about how we get product adoption, and they have to, those two can't just collide. They have to work together. And I think in this instance, they're working together really nicely. Access to everyone, to me, and in this instance is like, well, with the login product, you can actually get a free NFT domain name through the login. You can get your domains on Polygon and not pay gas fees, and and get them, pay with them with US dollars versus just with crypto, and you all of a sudden you have a better user experience. So thinking through that is super important, and I love hearing. And
don't get me wrong, everything that you just said, I wanted to centralize it, but it's not going to happen for years. Like USD on-ramps, like these are things that we need companies for. These are things that, there are counterparties. And so it's the best solution, and that's the solution we should use.
Yeah, no, makes sense. And I'd like to maybe even dive a little further into some of these challenges. Like, are there challenges that you feel like you're facing that are really unique to this community ownership, initiative?
Yeah,
and also benefits too.
Yeah, so the one that I'm the most concerned about, the benefits are long, and I'm excited to talk about those, but the one that I'm the most concerned about is we want to be a community-owned project, and we want to be a good product. There's a serious tension where someone will show up and they'll say, oh, well, you need to integrate with X because the community wants it, and then they'll have like 10 bot accounts. Hey, we want this too. And it's like, okay, guys, you Sybil attacked our Discord. Does that mean that we should integrate? And at the end of the day, there has to be someone writing the code. And we can't just say, I will write whatever code the DAO votes on. Like, that is incredibly naive, and that is not a good way to build a product. So I think the one that I'm both, it's like an opportunity and a concern, is as our DAO launches, we have a follow-on to this pledge, which is kind of like, here's how we want product development to work. It doesn't have to be with our team. Like, if you want to vote us off the island, you don't think we're good stewards of this product, that's okay. But here's what we think a good product is. Here's how we think the product and the community should relate. Here are the things that we think are purely the community, and here are the things that we think need to go through this filtration process where it's like, at any moment, the community can say, we hate this, tear it all down. But until that happens, you need taste and thought. Because the truth is, not every comp holder is going to read every compound proposal. And we're going to have the same issue, probably even more, because a wallet is a mainstream product. It's not some DeFi niche thing that only a few people are going to be interested in. And everyone's going to say, I have the best answer. One that we ran into recently, and I could totally be wrong about this, but it's a small example, is people were telling us, well, we really need to be able to import by private key. You're only importing recovery phrases. And I've heard this a few times, and I get it. I've got some weird old wallets too, but we're trying to prioritize our time. So I asked, well, why? Why do you need to import by private key? And they said, well, we put in recovery phrases and it gives us the wrong address. And I said, oh, you actually mean you want derivation paths. So you don't, that's kind of like a fancy, knowledgeable, well, we're wallet devs, so we know this, and you don't as a user. But so you don't just want to say yes to everything. And I think that's going to be the trickiest thing for us is to maintain this community participation without being like, okay, you guys make the decision every time, vote on it.
So is the DAO, it has the opportunity to vote on things, but is that decision final?
That's right. So here's the plan. So the plan is we have these smart contracts. So this is the team. This is Thesis. It's mostly Thesis. There are a few outside folks who just have started working with us on Discord and have gotten excited. But we have these smart contracts, and our plan is just to open source them. And anyone can launch the smart contracts. We are not going to deploy them. Any user is welcome to do it. And what it will do is it'll say, well, here's the initial requirements to join the DAO, and then here are the things the DAO can control on chain. It can control where swap revenue goes. It can control where we have some other kind of like proceed revenue type things that will be launching in the wallet. It can control where all of that goes. What it can't do, you guys can vote us off the island. So like we're going to ask, please give us some tokens. Like we would like to be funded for our work going forward. If you don't want to, don't. And then going forward at any time, you can cancel the dev team, and obviously we'll help with the orderly transition. But yeah, so it's this balance between we're going to be distinct things. There's a team of people who are building this. There's a bunch of individuals who have started to become a team who are building it, and there's going to be a DAO. And yeah, so that's the best way I've been able to slice it. I know some people are going to want to desperately be like, I should be able to vote on the color of this button. And that's a big part of the experiment. Whether or not we'll be able to like cultivate wisdom is open question.
Yeah. Oh, no. Awesome. And I got to ask about a little bit about some of the sanctioning we're seeing happening from the governments like the U.S. government right now. And I'm curious if that's a reason why you think people should be using decentralized wallets versus something like MetaMask. Like, do you think there's a risk of wallet centralizing transactions coming up in the future?
Hell yeah. I think that the risk is clear. We've had a shot across the bow in the space. We've had the Treasury do something that I imagine is going to be challenged in court, and eventually they'll lose. But this is our moment to wake up and to realize what's going on. And it's not because I, Matt Luongo, want to help someone get around sanctions. That's not the point. The point is I, as a software developer, am writing code, which is free speech, to build a credibly neutral platform under all of these things. You don't need wallet or base layer censorship to follow the law. That's ridiculous. And, so I think it's important that we solve this sort of at every layer of the stack. And right now, we are not, like, our provider, we mostly are using Alchemy. We're still working on POCT and sort of more decentralized approaches to on-chain access. So, like, we would get hit too. Tally won't magically get you around this stuff. But our goal is to do that. And I think the most important thing is, I'm on this podcast. It's pretty easy to send me an Instagram or to have someone sort of kick down my door. We need thousands, hundreds of thousands of people whose doors have to be kicked down if we want to actually ensure the vision that we see for this space exists. And that's, math is king. And if you want to censor us, you're going to have to censor all of us.
Yeah. No, interesting perspective here. I just had a podcast episode with the chief legal officer of at Polygon talking about the implications of the Tornado Cash situation, and I also like your take around that full decentralization might be your goal, but right now not there, but still working. Oh,
you have to be real.
So
yeah, because in our space, I think people love to say that they're there today.
Yeah. And
even Tornado Cash said they were there while they still before they had sort of thrown away the admin keys. And I remember there was a big Twitter spat about it. Eventually they threw away the admin keys and then they did the right thing.
They burned them, right?
That's right. Yeah. So I think that, we just need to be real about where we are and where we're going.
Yep. Well, cool. I'd like to kind of wrap up the interview talking a little bit more about Tally and Unstoppable and the integration here. And we integrated login, right? So could you give me maybe your perspective on how NFT domains at large and maybe even also the login do improve that wallet experience and maybe the safety or the UX of replacing hex addresses with readable names?
Yeah, so I'm actually really going to focus on the addressing because it's so core to a wallet. As much as I think login is vital to improve the rest of our systems, for me as a wallet dev, it's the addressing. And the issue is every time I show a user a piece of data that they can't hand verify, I'm exposing them to a scam, to a potential scam, to phishing, to something, to a security issue, right? So maybe it's, you memorized the first 3 and the last 3 of your address. Well, it turns out with the
last 4 for me.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And wallets actually support this, right? They make it clear, you only need to know the last 4. But then it's very easy for me with this desktop that I'm on right now to actually grind out addresses that have the first and last few that are the same as yours. So it's like, okay, well, so that's not secure. So am I supposed to memorize this whole 32-byte thing? That's obviously off the table. So I think this is where addressing becomes incredibly important in human readable names. So, you know, what we do, again, I'm going to really focus on addressing is with Unstoppable, ENS, and anyone else who has a solution to this problem, what we'll do is when you send money, if there's a reverse resolved address, we'll show you. So like if you're like, oh, if you paste an address, we'll actually pop up, well, here's the name associated. If you send to a name, fantastic, you know that it's going to land in the right place. But then anytime you interact with the contract at all, we will also reverse resolve. And the idea here is that if we can get smart contract devs actually using these name systems, suddenly people don't have to be so afraid that, oh, did the Curve front end get hacked? Am I interacting with the correct smart contract? Am I sending money to the right place? Are my apes gone, you know, because I approved the wrong address? And so I think names are a huge fix. I mean, they can also be a problem. There are lookalike names you have to worry about. But we can solve that at the wallet level, and it's a lot easier than convincing people to memorize the long hex string. We run into the same issues with transactions. We have to tell people what the transaction does. We can't just tell them, like, this hex box is what you're signing. So I think that names are a huge component of that. And you want names that are consistent, that work across different platforms, that are distinguishable. You also want them that are cheap, frankly, if you want as many people to use them as possible.
Yeah. Wow. I really like that breakdown you had about naming, and I don't think I've actually maybe spoken to a wallet dev, you know, about this before. So cool to hear that perspective. Even what you said about, like, if you can't hand verify, and that's just a term I hadn't used, you know, thinking about NFT domain names even, is I guess hand verify means like you got to be able to write it down from, you know, memory.
Oh, yeah.
You would just like
you have to be able to use your eyeballs and maybe open a browser tab or something and figure out, am I confident that I'm telling my wallet to sign the thing I think I am? Because if I'm not, I just sent my life savings to the wrong person, and I'm not going to get it back.
Do you think everyone is going to eventually have a wallet? And if they do all have a wallet, does that mean you think everyone who's an internet user will have an NFT domain name too?
Hell yeah, I do. So I think that we all already have wallets now, whether or not you've installed, MetaMask or Tallyho or anything else. We all already have these like key pairs on our phones. So it's just a matter of time between like Apple and Google and everyone else getting their shit together so that it's just core to your phone experience. Even though I like to laugh at, like, you know, it's easy to laugh at like the Solana phone and a blockchain phone. The core idea that you need that stack to work today is correct, right? So yeah, I think they're all going to have names, and I think going a step further, they're probably all going to want avatars. I expect that I will want to have multiple names for sort of like different aspects of who I am, because I don't want to be, it's nice to be a dog on the internet. I don't always just want to be Matt Luongo, father of however many. I won't dox myself and wallet dev. Sometimes I just want to be a random guy on Reddit who's shitposting, you know? Yeah. So yeah, I expect people will have more than one.
Yeah. No, I definitely think the NFT domain name identity is going to be fluid, but also gets, for a different conversation, also gets interesting when you start thinking about how like your reputation and stuff ties back to that. But no, awesome conversation here. And maybe my last question is, where can people listening to this go and find Tallyho, like download the wallet themselves and get it on their phone even? Yeah, you got it. So tally.cash, there's a download button right at the top right. If you want to sign the pledge, we would love to have you. We've got 60,000 signatures so far. Our Tally community pledge is tally.cash/web3pledge. And if you're on your phone, check out the Kiwi browser. We're still a browser extension, but it works on mobile, and we're working on something native that I'm excited to share next year. Awesome. And I see that you have a Brave extension too, which is great. Today, Unstoppable just announced that all of our NFT domains can be used as websites on Brave. So like I can see, you know, we can actually extend that to Chrome pretty easily. We should chat after and make sure that we support that as well. Awesome. Heck yeah. Well, Matt, great convo. I appreciate you sharing, you know, a little bit about building this decentralized wallet, why it's so important, some of the challenges and benefits, and even talking through, you know, the value side of things and how access and the user experience really can benefit from NFT domain names. So love to see it. With that, we'll catch you in the metaverse, and I'll be checking out the wallet and downloading it and using it myself. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Josh.
All right. Peace out.